We can also hear from, of course, the former energy minister or Minister for Power, Dr. Kwabena Donkor, who is challenging the World Bank country director.
We brought in the Ameri power plant, as you'll recall, as an emergency power plant. The emergency power Ameri plant had a capital recovery cost of $0.055 per kilowatt hour for year 1 to 5. And then it had a capital recovery price of $0 from year 6 to year 20. Therefore, for its 20-year lifespan, minimum lifespan, the levelized capital recovery was $0.2377. For comparison, we'll take the Sonun Asogli Power Plant Phase 1, which we call SAP 1. The capital recovery was initially 0.0523, negotiated in 2007. This was later renegotiated down to 0.0395 when the Phase 2 and 3 were being added during the John Mahama regime, during the period of emergency. If we take the TICO, Takoradi International Company, the tariff or the capital recovery there was 0.0365 in 2007. Jacobson, which is one of the plants, one of the IPPs, not emergency. The IPPs brought in 2014. The capital recovery was 0.03788, again lower than Sonun Asogli Phase 1. And this was brought in 2014. TT2PP, which is Tema Plant 2 power plant owned by VRA, has a capital recovery of 0.0309. These are higher than for the Ameri. It is important to raise these issues because the World Bank Group Country Director created the impression that all the power purchase agreements signed under the John Mahama regime were higher, expensive, and in his way contributed towards the challenges of the power sector today. I wish the country director had gone a bit back or gotten his researchers to look at the holistic picture. The country director also talked about take-or-pay agreements that the Mahama government contracted a number of take-or-pay agreements. It is interesting that since the Mahama government left office at the end of 2016, every single power purchase agreement, or indeed fuel purchase agreement, the Tema LNG project, has had a take-or-pay component. Take-or-pay is a reality in our situation because of confidence. A 330 megawatt combined cycle plant on the average will cost about $500 million in our sub-region. Is the country director of World Bank saying that the IFC, International Finance Corporation, which is an arm of the World Bank, are they saying they will fund a project worth $500 million and not demand a guarantee or an offtake agreement? In developing country scenarios, especially in our part of the world with instability, no investor is going to put $500 million in a plant in your country and say pay only when you take the power. Other than that, we must always remember that for power plants and for normal international business projects, project finance is 30% equity, 70% loan. Debt. That is the normal ratio, 30 equity, 70 debt. How are you going to service the debt if revenue will come in only when there is offtake of power? And that is why there is a capital recovery or capacity charge. When the plant does not run and the plant is not faulty, there are conditions set up in each contract. Once the plant is available and it's not running, you are not taking the full cost. If it's not running, it's not consuming fuel. Fuel is the biggest single cost in running a plant. You only take your capital recovery, which enables you service the facility. And that is why a new AXA agreement has been signed by this government. They signed an interim one when the AXA 5-year contract lapsed. The interim one had a take or pay. The new one for the AXA plant in Kumasi has take or pay. The new PPA for the AXA plant in Tema has take or pay. The Tema LNG project is a take or pay 20-year project contracted by this government. It is not for nothing, because investors will want to be assured that there is going to be a revenue flow, that their investment will not lie idle with no revenue. No project can get to financial closure without the funders being sure that there will be revenue flow to service the facility. And so I am quite surprised that the country director of the World Bank will make such aspersions without examining the reality.
What's the reality? I want to bring in now Dr. Yusuf Sulemana, who's an energy policy strategist. Thank you for spending some time with us. So, a divided opinion on this matter. Some say take or pay is helpful. Others believe it's part of the problems that we face now. But looking at the landscape, our capacity, demand, and where we are now in terms of our energy needs, would you say that the take or pay is indeed the way to go, Doc?
Yeah, thank you very much, Blessed, and good afternoon to you and your cherished viewers. It's just unfortunate that I have to enter into this conversation when it's taking political dimension. It's whenever it takes such a dimension, it vitiates right judgment. However, I mean, we still have to talk about it. If you look at what brought about this kind of agreement in the first place, you see, if you don't have alternatives, Blessed, and then you are pressed, nobody can tell you that. Nobody can tell me that. Take or pay is better than take and pay. Take and pay will always give you strategic advantage, But like I listened to the minister quite well, and he's right in some areas, in a way that there are some clauses, there are some areas where take and pay or take or pay, it could be used, especially when the supply is just constrained. And sometimes even the requester, the one who is the off-taker, sometimes will request that I need take or pay because I want to secure, the product, or I want to secure the commodity. So in that instances, take and pay, take or pay is just what is okay. And that one has to be an agreement between the buyer and then the seller. And I mentioned again that usually the buyer sometimes will even ask for it because he wants security of the product. But what was our situation? Our situation was that, we were just pressed. If you look at the time that it happened.
That was the reality at the time when we're facing all of the energy crisis. But for how long will this persist? That's the question. Of course, former Power Minister indicating there that even the new agreement signed by this incumbent government also deal with the take-or-pay situation. So it's become a norm for our policymakers.
A very good one, Blessed. And that's why I was just moving myself, gravitating to. And it's good you make that interjection.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, that I was just trying to paint an argument that is not so 100% devilish. If you look at analysis point of view, objective point of view, that take or pay, no way. Like I mentioned, sometimes the buyer may even request for that. But to take that as a norm, I have every problem with that. So, because, see, if you go into such an agreement like a take or pay, and then you continue to put yourself in that agreement, you're going to be boxed in at a point in time that you may not even need the product, and you have to pay for that. So yes, if you put take or pay and take and pay, especially at the situation that we find ourselves, I struggle to find a justification why we should still push ourselves into take or pay agreements. Because at the end of the day, you, the off-taker, unless you are phenomenally efficient to make sure that, your power availability is there, that you can always take advantage of the situation and run it continuously, and which is not possible with respect to the inherent inefficiencies that we have within our infrastructure. We can't have that. So there's always bound to be that capacity charges. So I still maintain that going forward, this take or pay contracts, we have to look into it. We have to look into them. The contracts, we have to look into them and make sure that if there's a possibility of actual renegotiating to stand to be competitive, then we have to do that. However, if the renegotiation process will compound the issue, because my understanding is that the information I'm picking is that some of the power purchase agreement that they tried to renegotiate, we ended up compounding the situation. That way we can't live with that. So yes, I stand by the point that, or I'm of the view that we can go for renegotiation if to grant us competitive advantage. And yes, and if there's any new contract that is going to be signed, let's put all things on to bear. We don't have that too much pressure on us. If there's the finances that the former minister is talking about, there can always be a way out. So at this moment in time, I will not support the idea of going for any take or pay, because that will only it will not deliver its competitive advantage.
Here's the situation. We're still finding ourselves in that desperate position. In just about 25 days, the IPPs may withdraw services if funding is not made available. The decision to going for building plants is a long-term capital project, which we can't fulfill, I'm not sure, in the next 3 or 4 years. You tell us, though. So between a rock and a hard place, that's where we find ourselves now. What's your recommendation in terms of the approach the finance minister ought to use at this moment? Satisfy the IPPs with a take or pay, or we go off for some time, go back to the dark days of Dumsor and look for a sustainable means, which will be possibly building a plant which will take us away about 4 years or more. That's where we find ourselves now.
Yes, that's very interesting. I doubt if just that we need to build new plants, Blessed. Okay. We have the infrastructure available. We just need to be efficient. The bane of our problem is the fact that we are not efficient. I'll take you back to this World Bank recommendation. If they look at the recommendation that they gave, where they recommended that we have to liberalize or to diversify, or in a better word, to allow private sector participation into the power sector. Actually, they didn't single out only the generation aspect of it. They also included distribution aspect of it. And like I always mentioned on your platform, this power, value streams, the generation, distribution, and then the transmission, they are so intricately linked. And so if there's an inherent inefficiencies in any of the stages, the cascading impact on the other stage is going to be dire. And so we can't say we are so pressed that we have to go to take or pay and compound the problem. It will compound the problem, undoubtedly. What we need to do is to be efficient. And we have to be efficient in every value stream that we find ourselves. In this case, I will always come to the distribution aspect of it. They recommended that we diversify, we liberalize, this aspect as well. But we couldn't do that. For whatever better reason, we didn't do that. And you saw the kind of inefficiency that we have. And we always resort to the fact that increment in tariffs is the panacea to solving our problems. And I always say that is not the panacea. That could end up compounding the problem. What we need to do, I'll come back. We have to get the fundamentals right. What are the fundamentals? Let work to become phenomenally inefficient in all these processes, especially the distribution arm of it. That is where the cash flow, that is where the money comes from. Why is the IPPs complaining? Because the supply or the money that they supply to the user, the end user, the money is not coming back. Power is generated, it is given to the end user. The money is not coming back. Where is the money going to? Meanwhile, the power is given. So this is the problem. So I would recommend that let's make concerted effort. I know the distribution aspect, ECG and Co, they are doing so well, and they are, they are trying to revitalize their revenue handles to be able to curb the inefficiencies. So if they can do well to curb the inefficiencies within especially the distribution chain, as well as other chains, I think, and we can guarantee cash flow. We don't need to box ourselves in like take and pay for the fact that we don't have money to do that. Where is the money going? And it's not that take or pay is going to solve that problem. Blessed. That is not going to. Why is it to solve the problem as we have?
And what may complicate the situation is the impending audit of the agreement itself. So even as renegotiation may take place, the audit has to start first, and the IPPs are not taking that. If that moves beyond the end of the month, the power still go off.
I just want to believe that, and I just want to pray that cool heads will prevail. I know the IPPs, they are businessmen. I mean, they are in to make profits. But I just want to believe that I want to urge them, to sit down with the policymakers of the day, to be fair to each other, and then look at Ghanaian populace put the populace into the picture. I know it's a very difficult thing, but we have to look at that. We can't afford to go back into doom so at all. So whatever the government can do for them to meet the IPP demand halfway, so that they can be, and I believe there can always be a way to agree. There's no way we can have agreement between two parties. So I'm just hoping that cool heads will prevail. These parties can come together, and then they can meet the IPP's demand halfway, in a way that we don't have doom so, because doom so is not anything that any Ghanaian will wish for at this moment in time. Blessed.
Certainly not a place I would want to go back to. But anyway, we're grateful for your time. We'll wait to see what the outcome of the engagements will be. Dr. Yusuf Sulemana joining us with his specialist thoughts on these matters. But in the energy sector as well, Saudi Arabia, as we understand, is cutting oil production by 1 million barrels a day in a bid to prop up oil prices. The announcement was made after a meeting of OPEC Group, Plus Group of producers in Vienna yesterday. In response to the announcement, crude prices have experienced some sharp surge, reaching new heights in the global market. The West Texas, of course, is selling and sold to some $73 and $27 per barrel, reflecting a substantial increase, similar to the Brent crude oil, recording a significant rise, reaching some $77.64 per barrel. So what does that mean for the Ghanaian market, for instance? I want to bring in policy analyst Peter Tekpe, who's also watching the figures closely. You've been paying attention to that. It has some level of implication, not just for the transport sector, even the energy sector will suffer from this. You're watching the figures. What do they tell us, and what's the implication for a country such as Ghana?
Thank you very much. Indeed, this is not good news for Ghana, because we actually coming out of a situation where we're hoping that we will recover, as an economy, but unfortunately, we're hearing these news. And these are some of the things that we cannot avoid because we don't have control over it. The reason is that our, forex reserves is highly depleted, and we know that one of the areas that causes the depreciation of the cedi is when demand is high. And of course, because of the level of import we almost importing all the, toll is down. So all the petroleum products we are using now, we are importing, which means that Ghana will have to look for more forex to be able to buy. And once the demand for forex goes up, of course, then it will have impact on the pricing at the pumps. And so what we have to then look at as a nation, because we import almost everything that we are actually consuming, then we have to look at an alternative. And I think that the goal for oil, policy that government brought. We have to look at how we can streamline it to benefit the Ghanaian.
Yeah,
so
unfortunately, that's not happening anytime soon. You take a look at the IMF conditionality, and that policy may have to be reviewed. So that will be a challenge for us. You agree?
Yeah, it will be a challenge, but IMF also knows that in as much as they are coming in to help us, the situation is not to make the situation worse off. And so if the reason why you are coming to help us is not to make us worse off, and there are conditions for which we will bring that situation, then of course then you have to also look at your conditions, because how will Ghana mobilize forex to be able to import? The sources of importation, the source of importing crude, of course we all know that we need to go to the market to look for forex to buy. Unfortunately, we cannot go to the international market as we used to do to borrow or to get FX. Our reserves is currently less than 3 months of import cover, very low. And we are consuming over $400 million even a month. That should tell you how much we need to be able to stay afloat, because we can't afford to get the economy to run to a halt when there's no crude product or oil in the country. And so this is a very significant or sensitive aspect of running the country, such that we cannot afford to run out. And so definitely IMF, since they are coming in to support, they will not let us worse off. And that is the reason why I'm saying that we have to look at an alternate policy. An alternate policy we have is, of course, is the oil for gold policy. If IMF want to cancel it, there could be a reason why they want to cancel it. So how do we restructure it such that it will benefit the Ghanaian?
Yeah, at least they're not the ones asking that we cancel that as conditions precedent. Of course, the Ministry of Finance has signed that agreement, an MOU with the Bank of Ghana, indicating that there will be strict zero financing. So that arrangement alone knocks us off the market in terms of running the gold for oil policy. It's not happening soon. It may not happen anytime soon.
We will, looking at the current circumstances, that is what we'll say, that it's not happening soon. But I am saying that looking at the circumstances in which we find ourselves now as a nation, we need support from IMF. There are conditions that we have to meet. If the conditions is going to make the country worse off, assuming that Ghana cannot mobilize FX or forex to import crude and prices keeps going up and everything comes to a halt, what is the benefit of the IMF then? That is why I'm saying that, of course, the policies are made to be complied with, but when circumstances change, then of course you need to go back and revise and see how you can calibrate the process or the policies or the conditions to be able to help you, run the economy. And that is the most important.
Yeah, but why, I'm just wondering, why focus on the precious metal when we have options upstream? Are you ruling that out?
The options we have upstream, we all know that our production capacity has not been as expected for some time now. And so even if we should bring all that we are producing to even consume, how are we going to do that? Because Tor is down. That is why we need to be very intentional in looking at some of our strategic assets, such like Tor, so that we will revive it, because this is the time when this is needed. Of course, we also have BOST there, but government need money to import to fill the tanks at BOST. Where is the money? We have to go outside and look for funds. But of course, now looking at the condition, it will be very difficult for an investor to come in to say they are supporting you with funds. That is why we need to look at the aspect within our capacity that we can manage. Of course, and this is one of them. So if you have resources that you can use even as a barter for you to get the economy running, of course, then it is just prudent enough for you to go for that. And that is, you see, the gold for oil is not a bad idea. It's about the management. And that is why people are calling for transparency. And I think that if that is done, of course, the benefit, because this is not going to happen forever. It is because of the circumstances we find ourselves now. If Ghana should be able to go to the international market now to borrow and be able to have enough forest reserves, of course, all this will be in the past.
And for some, this is just the markets reacting to what OPEC is doing, and that things may stabilize soon. What's your own outlook of how far we may go, probably with a surge or otherwise?
The honest thing is that because of the way things are going now, you cannot predict what OPEC will come out with, because you see, every economy is struggling now. And so then these guys are also business people, and they're looking for higher returns, of course. And so when they look at circumstances where they will be impacted negatively, then this is how they can come in. So you see, it's a cartel. And we don't have capacity near this cartel at all. And so I would say that in the coming days, the factors, you see, COVID should teach us a lesson that circumstances can come up that you don't have control over. And so as an economy, as a country, what we should be focusing on is how to manage ourselves properly, such that we will not find ourselves in this situation, because today is COVID, tomorrow nobody knows what is coming. And looking at what is happening now, nobody can tell tomorrow. It may not be even just OPEC, it may be another thing else. That is why we need to look at your space. What can you do within your capacity to be able to manage yourself, such that in circumstances such as this, when everybody is struggling, every economy is struggling, you'll be able to at least have something reserved to be able to manage yourself. And that's why it's very, very important that the managers of the economy start looking at the long term rather than looking at the short term, so that we build an economy that will sustain shocks that cannot be predicted.
Okay. We'll wait to see what the future holds about. But in terms of your personal outlook, a good one, what would you advise the general public?
Well, for me, the outlook is that the general public must just, prepare for, uncertainties. The reason is that we can get up tomorrow and then the prices can go up that we do not expect. And so, of course, nobody can also have tanks in his or her home and go and buy fuel and be storing. What we can do is for us to be able to prepare our minds, prepare our, if you are a business and you are running and you need fuel or you need plant, or you have a plant, then of course you need to start looking at how to be planning for some reserves so that you use it in times of difficulty. That's the only way out. Other than that, now nobody can predict anything anymore, because anything at all can happen any day.
Okay. We'll leave it here for now. Peter Tekpe, policy analyst, joining us on the latest developments in terms of the crude prices.